Wonderful. I've been totally distracted by leaking windows. So, anyway. Hi, Gina. Hi, Vanessa. Hi, Christina. Hi, Sherry. Hi, Elaine. Mm. So, this week, what have y'all thought about this week? Cleaning the pool. Did you think about purifying my negativities while I clean? Because that's a practice we can do. So that's a good habit, since generally when we say the word clean, we don't like the chore we're doing. So it's really helpful to make it, turn it into practice, because then it's, you know, on the path. How cool is that? So, okay. Did I do that with my leaky window? Not really. So, see, the trouble is, from my side, in my place, you can't see any water. There's no leaks apparent. But apparently underneath me, something's happening. So trying to figure that out is harder than apparently my skill set. So anyway, I'm gonna go home today, and borrowing Rebecca's drill, I'm going to take the panel off underneath my windows and see if I've got an aquarium in there. I have this sneaky suspicion that that's what's going on, is that I may not see any water, but there's, because when I went and opened my window today, this little thing kind of popped out, and I thought, is that coming from underneath? Is there an aquarium? Anyway, so that's where I am. So if I get distracted, then it's the same old, same as usual. So suffering, samsara, the complications of samsara. Yes. And apparently so were the windows. And so that's why this is an issue. So there we go. It's all teachings. So, all right. So trying to turn my mind towards others. Okay. I can be. All righty. So let's think about the four measurables. So take a moment first to think about why you showed up. And so think about how you can use this time well based on your reason for showing up. Curiosity's a good enough reason. Oh, from my side, it's great that we're here, but to make it sure it's beneficial for you, how you set up your motivation helps increase the positive karmic imprint. You know, because intention's everything. It's what directs our cause, creating causes and effects. Our intention is what matters in terms of things with minds, create in part of that interdependent cycle of cause and effect. So, and then setting our attention helps us direct our mind in a particular direction. So some of us who are just in the habit of being positive, well, I don't want to put it that way. For some of us, we already have this habit, It's just, it's something we just do. Others of us have to work at it. So it's just, if you have to work at it, this is the time to set an intention before this class. So, and it's good to try to think in terms of not just what you'll get out of it, but how you'll get something out of it. That because it's a cooperative experience, it's not just like somehow magically the Buddha's teachings will enter your mind, your heart, and change you. We have to listen, we have to try to internalize it, we have to think about it, we have to experiment, we have to reflect on it, we have to go, I don't think so. We have to do all those things to make it up. We really want to make active decision making about whether or not the teachings make sense. So it's not a passive activity at all. So then we want to think about the bigger picture. Just it's always good to set an intention with positive aspects of it for yourself and others. So we always want to combine whatever our intention is with the wish that it also benefit those around us and then benefit those around them, and it ripples out. So to help us have that big view, we'll recite the four measurables, which are on the screen, or if you can everybody read the screen. If you can't read the screen, it's on page 34. So you need me to enlarge the screen because I can do that too. Sort of, maybe someday. May all sentient beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all sentient beings be inseparable from the happiness that is free from suffering. And may all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free from attachment for friends and hatred for enemies. Then we'll recite, those of you who are comfortable reciting the refuge and bodhicitta prayer. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. So we've been trying to take a glimpse into what does wisdom look like. We talk about how to get to enlightenment, we need two, wings to the bird. We need the wing of compassion or method, which just means what we actually do, and then wisdom, which means the understanding of things like cause and effect, of understanding reality as it is, understanding that things don't exist inherently, blah, 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 blah. So we've been trying to look a little bit about what does that mean to say things don't exist inherently. So, what you think?
The wisdom of realizing emptiness, that there is no inherent self, no independent self, no inherent existence, and no independent.
So there's no independent origination,
Right.
no inherent existence, and the first one was no independent self. Yeah. Self, just like all phenomena, are not independent, all impermanent phenomena. Why is that? What's the king of reasons? Yeah, we're a good group. Yeah.
Interdependence. Nothing can exist on its own without everything else to make it so.
That's right. Go, Brian. Because of interdependence, that things don't exist inherently. Things do not have independent because they're dependent arisings. It's not complicated. This is very straightforward. If they're not independent, if they're not, they are dependent. So what does that mean?
Nothing exists inherently by itself.
What does it mean to be dependent? Think of something that's dependent, that's obviously dependent.
Everything needs something else.
Yes.
It implies relationship.
It implies a relationship. What else does it imply? No.
Responsibility too.
I'm sorry.
Responsibility.
Responsibility.
Because we're responsible for everything else just as much as ourselves.
That would be a lovely thing to internalize, wouldn't it? That we're responsible for everything else, Connection. How about babies? What are babies dependent upon?
I don't know those people.
Yes. Babies cannot continue to live without others helping them. Who was a baby in this room? That's right. We are all still alive because someone took care of us when we were not able to do that. So we're dependent on the causes that keep us, able to exist.
Well, even as a grown-up, though, we're still dependent. We're dependent on the people.
Yeah, let's change subjects.
We're dependent on the people who make our clothes.
Right. But first, let's talk about just coming into existence. So, because helping us think about, like us as babies, how dependent we were as babies, can help us connect all of the interdependence there is. Like you're saying, like even as adults, we're dependent on all these people. But somewhere along the way, the idea of us being independent creeps in, and we kind of grasp onto that. And we want to counter that idea. It's one thing to say the words that, because we all know these things, and we know that we actually depend on others for the clothes we wear, for the cars we drive, for the food we eat, but we don't think about it much. And when we're unable to do something, often we have a resistance to asking for help or acknowledging that we can't do it ourselves. You should have seen me try to caulk a screw hole this week, those tubes with caulk in it that aren't like the caulk gun, you can't get the stuff out, Yeah, I mean, it's really tough. So after, a couple of days with, pliers to try to turn the thing and my feet, I finally managed, But there's a resistance. We develop this resistance to needing help. And when do you think it starts?
Well, when we're young, when children grow up, I can do it myself.
Right. We kind of come that way, don't we? It isn't, and there's a good reason for that, right? We really do have to try things to find out if we can do it. And that's how we learn how to do it, you know? So it's really quite the mental challenge to be, yes,
Parents promote independence.
yes. Most parents promote independence.
Society does too, in a way. We hear that idealized in our society all the time that you're supposed to be independent.
Society also idealizes independence, depending on what government you have. You know, so other countries aren't quite so much like that. Yeah, and that hence, and we make up that society. So that's a clue about our habits, you know, is that, oh, okay, we like that. So this is part of our challenge when we're trying to understand how things actually exist, is that we have this push-pull kind of relationship with independence and dependence, you know. So we have a what do you call it? It's not just an intellectual exercise. We have, you know, reactions to the thought of, you know, being dependent. As we get older, we can start to worry about it even more, you know, or we think we don't worry about it and then something happens and we kind of go, yeah, I don't like this, you know, so. So when we're thinking about how things actually exist, it's really helpful to think about like all along how we've developed and how grateful we are that people helped us. You know, we probably all have teachers we remember that, you know, really helped us get through high school, you know, or middle school or college or whatever, you know, that we've all had helpful moments with friends that really helped us kind of weather through something, you know. So it's helpful to look at just how interdependent we are and how our survival depended on it. So that can't be all bad, you know. And then how this is relationship, how we, you know, have that the whole basis of friendship and relationships with people we care about have a lot to do with our dependence. You know, it's, you know, what's the song? What is the song? I get by with a little help from my friends. For those of you old enough to remember. So I was telling someone about the NC State winning the NCAA championship back when Valvano was
Couldn't find
yeah,
anyone.
the wolf, yes, the wolf pack heart attacks. But well, that was 40 years ago. And I was telling someone, I was telling a physical therapist about it, thinking, he's not born yet. He was not born. But we, you know, it's so funny that we time has passed. Okay, but it's even someone's ability to relate to something you said is dependent on their past experiences, perhaps what year they were born, you know, all these things that literally every moment is interdependent, you know, so that we can build less resistance to this idea of accepting reality as it is. Because resistance is one of the big things that arise for us when we're suffering. You know, we resist that we could be part of the cause of this. You know? Is anybody, I mean, do y'all ever think, you know, when something bad happens, you know, what did I do to deserve this? Why me?
It's funny because that's it's a resistance, but you don't perceive it as that.
No, because you think it's somebody else's fault.
Yeah.
So that's, you know, that's part of our resistance to looking at something like nothing exists inherently, or these kinds of habits we have that obscure us from how things actually exist. And the fact that we can't see the big picture. You know, if we've been existing since beginningless time for eons, so our habits have been forming for eons, well, we don't remember any of that. We don't have the experience of that when we're trying to understand emptiness. You know, so that's a challenge. So we really have to base it on what we do understand about cause and effect. You know, and understand that you don't have to know every incident of cause and effect to know that cause and effect works, that it exists, that it operates. You know, am I making any sense?
Mhm.
So we want to catch ourselves when we realize, oh, I'm acting as if, or I'm thinking as if cause and effect doesn't exist. And that's an obstacle to developing wisdom. So then you have to be kind of in tune when you're observing your life and observing conversations and events and interactions and all this kind of stuff. You know, you have to be aware of how we filter things. So this is you know, we talk all the time about pausing. Something happens, a feeling of pleasant, unpleasant arises, and we have either, you know, we want to push it away if it's bad, we want to embrace it and have more if it's good. That we want to pause before choosing what to do next, so that we can not just have that very narrow perspective of, I like this, I don't like this. I think we were talking about this last week. You know, that, you know, we have this, you know, and we can't stop it from arising, the pleasant, unpleasant feeling that arises with each event. That's just what arises. That's preference. Nothing wrong with preference. What's wrong is when we move from preference to attachment to our preferences, or move from, I guess, the aversion we have for things that are not our preference. So we don't want to turn unpleasant into aversion. We want to be able to experience pleasant and unpleasant as they are, not give them more power than that. Because when we give them power, they end up with, you know, we end up with the mind of craving. We give that more power, we end up with the mind of grasping. I mean, that's what they mean, you know, these words in Buddhism. So being able to pause and be able to look at it from the perspective, whatever the event is, from the perspective of the big picture. To be able to step back and go, this isn't dependent arising. All sorts of things came together for this moment to arise. And we can't possibly know all the things that came together. You know, I couldn't possibly tell you all the things that came together for these particular people, including me, to be in this room at this moment. And all the things that worked present that cause the people who are not here to be not here. It's just, But we need to see the importance of this in order to make this kind of effort. And so that's where looking at the disadvantages of attachment and aversion can be helpful. So ordinarily, when we like something like my cup that holds my water, that keeps it cold, can you see any attachment in there?
You don't have it now.
Yes, that's the reality, isn't it? So what does that do for me, that attitude about my cup?
Crazy.
If I had the right attitude, it would free me. But that's not what I said. I don't have the right attitude. Yeah, exactly. Because, so I'm creating my own suffering by being attached, and this is no big deal. But it's a habit. Everything we do that supports the habit of being disappointed when we don't get what we want, or, even noticing that, that it takes your mind more than, a very small fraction of a second to move on. It's just interesting. So we don't want to support the habit, so we want to notice when our experience of pleasantness or unpleasantness goes to the next moment, it creates a story about it. Yeah.
I hope it's okay if I bring in another teaching that I had heard this week by Dr. Rick Hansen.
Yeah, I know him. Yeah.
Okay. And his talk this week had to be about an underlying sense of contentment. And he always goes to the ability for us to make it a practice. So you build up this arsenal so that this, relates to the coming and going. You're in the middle of a really pleasant experience, and you're recognizing it's going to end, but that's okay. There's this underlying sense of enough and contentment.
Well, that's what we want to replace, our underlying dissatisfaction that's there. Because that's what the Buddha was aware of, was that we suffer a lot because we have this dissatisfaction. We go towards the negative rather than recognizing it's okay if something that's pleasant is going to end. Because when we look at dependent arising, we know that's always true. Things that are pleasant, just like things that are unpleasant, change. It's inevitable. It's built in. It is the way cause and effect works. Why? Because of that, what we talked about before, that even our words speak to this. So what is the result of birth? Death. The final result of birth is death. So the final result of a pleasant feeling arising is the death of that pleasant feeling, the ceasing of it.
This would be where equanimity.
So equanimity, you see, we have a tendency to think equanimity might be boring. Whereas because we're missing the possibility of equanimity meaning contentment. What you think?
Well, according to Kunga, contentment is one of the gateways to enlightenment.
Well, that's a different tradition, so I can't speak to whether it's the same meaning. Okay.
Very similar because it's laced with equanimity.
Yeah, I'm not saying that the word contentment, but enlightenment might mean something different as well. So all of that, so that's the trouble with, it's like I just, because I don't know, I don't study that, I can't say anything to that.
So is like the thing we can do, is our self-talk after we pause. We could, like we just talked about, we could just say, it's going to end, and then maybe think about equanimity. Can you add to the self-talk?
Yeah. So it's like, okay, so say it's easier with something bad happening because we want that to end. So the feeling of unpleasantness arises. So, okay, and we pause. And instead of creating a story, what kind of stories what is our first response to things when something bad happens or we don't like what's going on? We have a feeling that it's unpleasant. I want it to end.
Worst case scenario.
The worst case scenario. Sometimes we go those are stories we make up.
It's pain, physical pain. Go
Physical pain.
Go away.
Yeah, go away. And why? When it doesn't go away, in the next moment, it's like, so we want to interrupt that habit of creating some storyline. So we do, so we know because we understand dependent arising that things that arise also cease. So we can just say to ourselves, this won't last. If it's a big deal to us, what's going on? Like, I don't know, our brand new car just got totaled, and that's going to mean a lot to our ability to get to our job, to our ability to pay the whatever's, that it has a financial impact. It may have a job impact. It may have a family impact if you've got, kids to drive around or something, so that's a bigger deal than stubbing our toe in terms of its impact, So when it's a big deal, we can still say, my suffering from this will end. And sometimes you have to really work with it. So this is why you think about these things, not when it's happening. You think about it when you're just sitting quietly thinking about, okay, how can I respond differently to unpleasant events? One thing you can think about is how you know that a year from now, it will not seem like a big deal. It might be superbly inconvenient. It's going to be annoying to have to try to come up with solutions to all the different things that it's impacting. But in the scheme of things, I know that a year from now, I won't remember how this moment's feeling.
I guess that's why it's called a practice. The words are all very sensible.
Right.
And the application is hard because when there's something aversive, it feels like a threat. You couldn't do it, like it, the nervous system.
Exactly. Yeah, this is what we have to overcome. So we need to respect the power of our aversion. And not give into it. Not say, well, run me over. It is a story we're making up, but it can feel like a threat when bad things happen. My whole life's going to change. Da 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 da. So we don't want to use the big events in our lives that have been difficult as the template for everything that happens to us.
I can relate to what Ann is saying, because I feel like, I need tools to, like, when I'm in the.
That's
kitchen.
right. And this is what I'm talking about. So you're sitting down thinking about these things. You're not out and about in the world having something happen. You're just sitting with your cup of tea, cup of coffee, This is not idle time to think about how you think. So as you sit down and you think about something that annoyed you recently, think, okay, how can I look at this differently? So that the next time something like this happens, I can use the pause more effectively. So thinking about the fact that it's impermanent, it will change. thinking about all the other things that have gone wrong, and you handle them. Big things, little things, no big deal thing, So yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate everything you've been saying very much. And, I just thought about last night. I had been talking to my vet on Friday because my cat was reacting in a manner that, she probably needs attention. I made an appointment for blood work, and last night I started to think about, I'm talking to my cat and I'm saying, oh my gosh, I developed this unbelievable story that you're gonna die soon. I called up my sister and she says, I know, depending on the diagnosis, they probably have medication for this, and I just went, whoa. But sometimes the power I give to an aversion is so strong, I can't get past it to think about something like that on my own.
That's why you do have to sit down and practice. Really think, and sometimes you have to write it down. And sometimes you need a cheat list to pull out. Like I know lots of people who have a tendency towards panic attacks. They have to have a written list to talk them down, so they just remember, oh, yeah, that's right. If I do this, do this, nothing wrong with that. We're trying to retrain really strong habits. Not everybody has them, but most of us do. Strong habits that make us think it's a threat, think it's, like life-changing. Every event's life-changing, and we just go there. So we need, so you can make a list, and you have to work at it, because you have to think of things like, okay, what's the best that could happen? Oh, there's medicine, that they will find out exactly what it is and they can treat it. No big deal. You might even have to write, no big deal. If that's the answer, it's no big deal. And you have to be kind to yourself, that there's a reason why this is a big deal to you. It's a big deal when loved ones get a diagnosis. That means we're going to lose them sooner than we hoped. It's a big deal. So we have to have respect for that. We don't need to treat ourselves like idiots just because we're having a reaction to something. That's not necessary. But it can help us to get perspective, to stand back and realize, okay, we don't know enough yet to go there, to go to the massive panic, heartbreak. That's important to get perspective. When my mother died, I was 27, and I'd wake up in the morning and I felt like someone's pulling my heart out of my chest. I mean, I felt physically in pain, just like, and I'd go, oh my goodness, people all around the world are experiencing this every day. How do we survive? It was just beyond belief to me how painful it was, and that this was an ordinary experience that all children go through. If you're lucky, that you outlive your parents. So, it's just interesting. So during that time, that period of time, that 4 months between, the diagnosis and her death, nothing else was a big deal. I wasn't worried about anything else. So we want perspective, because perspective helps. You start, because we tend to, when nothing big's going on, we turn little stuff into something big, and it's not a good habit. It makes our daily life kind of chaotic. So we want to work at no big deal mind. That, oh, I can handle this. And so in order to be able to do that, you need to really thought about how you can handle things. and how you do handle things. And then you have a whole history of handling things, you know? So you can have that as a tool to not make a catastrophic story over this unpleasant experience. And then with the small stuff, you know, you also have to deal with the small stuff. So the small stuff, you kind of can laugh at yourself, than thinking that, oh, like it's going to be a big deal. You don't have, I won't use that example. You know how you sometimes you find some product you really like and then they discontinue it. It's just like, you know, it's no big deal, but boy, it's so disappointing.
Problem.
Yeah, it's a first world problem without a doubt. And so you want to be able to think of those things that and be amused that you could actually turning this into suffering. Because that's what we're doing. We're turning it into suffering. We don't have to suffer at all. You know, but our story is making us turn it into suffering. Yeah.
So is there something to going through motions until it feels real? Is there?
Yeah, you just practice it. And you laugh at yourself because you haven't gotten it yet. You know, I mean, it's like being kind and you know, amused by, you know, our process is helpful. Because there's no reason to get mad at yourself for not being good at it. Of course, you're not good at it. You know, we have other habits, and our habits, you know, they say that we go towards the negative because we need it to when we were really vulnerable and lived in the jungle and we had to be able to detect danger. Oh, what's that sound? Oh, that leaf breaking is not the sound of an insect, it's the sound of a tiger. You know, we had to be really acutely sensitive to these things. Well, we don't have to now, but we still have that habit. You know, so we want to be. So these are the kinds of things you can do also do with your self-talk, you know, is just go, like what I had to do to help myself with panic attacks is I had to go through this process of going, okay, so you're afraid, you know, okay, well, I'm not going to do anything to make it worse. I had to tell myself that, you know, don't worry, I'm not going to do anything to make it worse. And then I basically had to do nothing for however long it took, you know, to just, okay, you know. But then you have to, and then later on, you have to think, okay, what were my other choices? You know, like, okay, you don't have to go to wherever you're going. That's, you might be the trigger, you know, whatever, you know, you go through all this list of realizing, okay, I have choices here. You know, one of which is to do things like, well, I still want to get on a plane because I don't want to be terrified of flying because I want to travel. So I'm going to have to suck it up. I'm just going to have to figure out a way to deal with this. I took drugs for a long time, you know, and then, but I didn't always want to take drugs, you know, because we have a list of things that that are acceptable to us, right? So it's like, oh, I don't want to have to need drugs to get on a plane. So I quit taking them on the return home because I knew I was going to come home. So I could tolerate that extra horror of getting on the plane without being medicated, you know. And now I don't take them at all, you know, because that's just the, you know, I mean, this is the process, you know. It's like, okay. Yes.
Elaine has a
Yeah,
question.
Elaine. Thank you, Cecilia. Elaine.
Hi, I don't even know, I don't know how I want to say this. Okay, so if you're raised your whole life with this, when you're fearful, you can rely on sort of this higher being, right? It's going to support and help.
Yeah.
In Buddhism, what are you relying on besides yourself?
Your wisdom, the teachings, teaching you, give guidance about what causes suffering. You know, since we don't have, you know, we're not teaching that the Buddha can come rescue us or, you know, whatever. And that, of course, I don't know that we teach that God can do that either. It's more of this, like having confidence that there's a meaning here. You know? And so in Buddhism, you can, which this is harder, perhaps, you know, You can look at cause and effect. I created the cause for this, so I'm going to learn from this and try not to create this cause in the future.
So lately, compassion is a practice.
Yeah, compassion is
And-
also a practice.
And for years, I think for myself, it was a concept.
Yep.
But lately, as hopefully as we grow older, we get wiser. I've been able to incorporate it in terms of difficult people.
Yep.
And self too, like your panic attacks. I was thinking of something for myself. Sometimes just saying to yourself, "It's okay, sweetheart, that's there." And that all of a sudden lubricates it. And you can actually, it's still there, but somehow that self-compassion.
Yeah,
you're
this is
not
what
fight-
makes it
it's
gentle.
not, yes, you're not fighting.
So,
In terms
but
of
the,
difficult people. And you clearly had a good relationship with your mother. My mother's 97, and as difficult as when I was her little girl. And she'll say things, it's like, who is it, Ram Dass, who says, "You think you're enlightened? Go home and spend a weekend with your parents."
isn't that the truth?
Yeah. So,
Yeah, time with our family really tells us where we are, aren't we?
So, I guess I've made it less personal. I've been able to do that. And I think that's like, it's like, oh, maybe I have a compassion practice now. I think of not myself being the object of her,
Well,
her
that's, yes.
but thinking of what caused her.
And this is, yes, all that is true. But we're also trying to learn to develop wisdom, and we need both. We need the wisdom of understanding cause and effect. We need the wisdom of understanding, impermanence. We need the wisdom of understanding that all sentient beings are suffering, that includes us. So we need that gentleness that when we're suffering, from the little bit of just dissatisfaction to the big bits of heartbreak and grief and sorrow, we need compassion for all of it, because none of it's fun. But the little stuff we can get rid of in this very life by catching ourselves and not making up a story about why it's a big deal.
We have to make a decision.
We have to make a decision. And then we can choose not to worry about feeling unpleasant, as if that's, because it's not an unusual experience, is it? Samsara is kind of relentless. So being able to build a tolerance for the little stuff by compassion and also wisdom of understanding that if happiness depends on getting what you want and not getting what you don't want, you don't stand a chance. If that's our measure, it's, not going to happen. So we need a different measure. For me, because I was an anxious person, the measure I had to find was, I can handle this. Because feeling like I can't handle it causes me lots of anxiety. So being able to find what keeps you sane is helpful for the small stuff. Like with relationships, it can be things like, okay, do I want this relationship or I don't want this relationship? If I do want this relationship, I have to accept that I'm having a relationship with another person who's suffering, and who's also going to act out, have issues, blah, 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 who's also seeking what they want, and I may not give it to them. So, that there's going to be ups and downs, but you choose whether you want the relationship or not. Now you can make that an emotional contract and say, I want this relationship if you do this, 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 and this, and this. you know.
Early detection.
Before you get into the relationship.
Yeah, well, that can be helpful if you're talking about romance. Also, it's but yeah, but so we need to understand that sometimes, you know, our dissatisfaction is all about not getting what we want. It has, you know, and it's not about the external thing, the external event, the external relationship, you know, the other person, you know, that all this stuff. We need to understand that we need other people, but expecting other people to just make us happy in every moment isn't realistic. Expecting ourselves to be perfect in every moment isn't realistic. Because sometimes when we learn some of this stuff, we think, oh, well, then anger should no longer arise. I get that it just makes me miserable, so it shouldn't arise. Wouldn't that be nice? It's not like that, is it? It still arises. The key to not adding suffering on top of that is not, you know, giving that state of mind power. And we do that, we give it power with the stories we create, like justifying the fact that we're angry. You know, instead of just saying, oh, I'm angry. It will pass. Let it pass. Don't keep talking about why you justified in being angry, because that's just going to make you continue the suffering. You know? Cause and effect. That no event is inherently pleasant or unpleasant.
We impute that. Yeah.
We have a feeling. I'm not even sure what we do is we have the feeling and then we impute on the trigger for that feeling inherentness. It's inherently bad or inherently good. And that's not correct. That's the opposite of wisdom.
Inherent existence, which doesn't.
Right. So remembering that things aren't inherently this or that. And that takes thinking about, doesn't it? You know, so you can't do it on the spot, brand new. You can practice the words on the spot, you know. I'm, like you can see yourself, like say you notice a story arising and you can see, I'm making this person to be an enemy. You can see that happening. And I know that that's actually not true. That's how I feel at this moment. So, all of these little steps help. It's not just success that helps. It's all the intermediate steps of being able to use our reasoning, and we usually have to practice away from it. We have to have an event and go, oh, I didn't like how that turned out, and then think about it. As opposed to, have you ever had that feeling like, oh, I wish I'd thought to say that after something, Well, yeah, but I'm talking about the other at the moment. That instead of creating that energy of thinking about the event and thinking, oh, I wish I had said that, you want to look at what would actually take your suffering away. It's not something that just keeps the event alive. That's giving it power. We don't,
So you're constantly eliminating and adding.
Well, yes. You're eliminating what is not true. So we really have to look at things to see what is not true. And we can just see by our words. Like sometimes we can just write about it and we can say, oh, I'm thinking, that's not, and then we go back and we go, oh, well, that's not true. oh, that's not true, you know, which helps us not fall for it, not fall for our habit of thinking that that is true. You know, and then we can add things like that's where compassion comes in really well. Is you know, okay, so how can I add compassion to this picture? You know, some of it's for yourself and some of it's for the other. But we need to work on ourselves and our own compassion, and also because we keep thinking our happiness and suffering is out there, you know, that in these experiences, these events, when it's actually in here. So we want to work in here in order to increase the odds of our happiness and to reduce our suffering. Because these little events are going to always happen. We can't control external things, and they aren't really the source of our happiness. We mistake them as the source of our happiness or suffering. And things in the world seem to support that, you know, like physical pain. You know, and it's very hard to discern what is the physical pain and what is the story pain that you've added on top of it. I learned meditation from a teacher who she started to meditate because she had some back issue and ended up in bed for 3 years, and it looked like she might just be there forever. And so she had to come up with something to do. So for whatever good luck she had, good karma remedy, she found meditation, you know, and so it gave her something to do other than, I guess, watch soap operas and eat chocolate, which is what my first choice would have been. But, you know, so, but that's how you build tools, is by choosing something that helps you handle something. You know, we need to, you know, so like you come home and you're grumpy, you pick up a Dharma book, you know.
That'll switch you instantly.
It's amazing, isn't it? I just find it amazing. Every time I pick up a Dharma book and I go, wow, I'm in such a better mood than I was 3 minutes ago. Why didn't I do this an hour ago? You know, it's just like, it's really interesting. And it's different than putting on the record of music you like. Just doing what we like doesn't necessarily give us any tools. It just reinforces that getting what we want is pleasant. You know, we need to reinforce the idea that effort for working on our mind and our response to things and all that stuff is worth the effort. And it won't feel like it at first. No. So it's, you know, we have to encourage ourselves that if I really want this to change, if I really want to quit reacting this way or that way or blah, 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 then I need to work on my mind, and I need tools for that. No. That makes
experience this morning. My neighbor behind me has these beautiful trees. They're just beautiful, right? It's like a living fence. Well, she decided to cut them all down and is putting up a hard fence. And so I know sometimes there's critters that live in trees. Anyway, I felt devastated by the loss of those beautiful nature. Killer. And so I said, I repeated that Buddhist practice. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering, including myself.
Right.
And that helped me to put these feelings because they were strong feelings.
Yeah.
You know, disturbing feelings. It helped me. So I kept repeating that mantra like a mantra.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm praying for the trees, of course. But I feel like what you're saying, it was a tool for me to have that
Right.
mantra,
Yep.
to say that, rather than staying in that state of agitation.
And probably
Anger.
hatred and anger and
Anger.
just all sorts of things. Yes. So yes. So did y'all hear that
Mhm.
back home? Okay. Thank you. So this is the thing. So saying things like, I really think memorizing short prayers is very, very helpful. Or you read a verse in a book or even a paragraph in a book and you go, wow, that really resonates with me. It's a good idea. Write it down, put it somewhere else. So you pick it up and read it from time to time. Because we need to rely on wiser words from time, you know, because our habits don't get us there. Our habits are getting us angry, more suffering, all that kind of stuff, or more exaggerated good qualities. We get attached and we think we have to have this, you know, and da 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 da. Like you could get attached to having trees as your fence between two homes, and because they're beautiful and they have all sorts of, you know, birds in it and all sorts of things, you know, you get really attached to that. You know, and not only could that your neighbor cut them down, what else could happen? Fire, hurricanes, disease within the tree. You know, we need to accept the impermanence of the trees. You know, so that's how we can, you know, the wisdom aspect is to look at the fact that things change. They're always changing. That might be because someone chooses to cut them down. It might be because they die of disease. It might be because a hurricane comes by and da 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 da. And we make ourselves really miserable, you know, by resisting impermanence. And so when we have to look at our habits of going, of where we think we feel fully justified. Well, it's just wrong that she cut down trees and put up a regular old fence, a real fence, a true fence, whatever that means.
From wood.
Made
cut down trees.
from cut down trees. Yeah. So we can just go run, you know, like practically a marathon of stories with one event, you know, and we feel totally justified in how angry we are. Then we have to go, why would I want to do that to myself? What is it about anger that's satisfying you? What is it about being right? Your idea of being right that satisfies you? You know, we have to challenge ourselves to think, okay, what is it that this event is teaching me about my beliefs? You know, and then look at that. See if our beliefs, you know, it's not like the belief is a problem. It's grasping at them. If there was something as right and wrong in an absolute way, you know, would it still happen? What is the good of staying angry about trees being cut down after the fact? So Luciana was using a tool to work with her mind so she didn't hold on to that and held on to something else instead.
First anger and plant trees.
Yeah, do it somewhere else. You might not be able to see them every morning, you know, but it's not all about you. What do you mean? That's one of my favorite things to look for, you know, is where am I in this picture? You know, what is the obvious center of the universe attitude that I have? How is it raising its unskillful head? You know, so What do you think?
Yeah.
And what do you think about tools? What do you getting some ideas here?
Yeah, I mean, it's something that, has just been, I'm so encouraged coming to your teaching course. That's where I'm learning about new tools, and, I just put them on my list and,
Yeah,
it's just great. I mean,
that's all it is we just keep gathering new tools, and you'll find some of them you'll actually use and some of them you won't. I mean, it just doesn't matter, And one of the key tools to use is not thinking it's okay to be angry at yourself for not having used the tools. It's really important to recognize that this is a process, not an event. Yes. And just go, oh, well, there I go again, but we don't have to hate ourselves for it. We just can see in action how what we've been doing isn't working. It adds to my misery, adds to my dissatisfaction, adds to, whatever. And you take a deep breath, and you go on to the next one. You don't have to hold on to the fact that, oh, there I went again.
I find that addressing some of these things in meditation makes it a more dispassionate, analytical, and it's sometimes more helpful.
Well, that's why I've been talking about doing this.
Doing it and not, but sometimes like you say, you can pause, but you can't always go into detail.
No, you have to do
And
this
sometimes
separately.
when you sit back later on, and I find another step even beyond that is meditation. A lot of times it takes away my emotion.
Meditation is sitting quietly. It doesn't matter if you're at your kitchen table making lists while you do it or on a cushion. It is the act of being aware of you're looking inward to see what's going on, and you can bring an event up to kind of go, okay, what happened here, and think about how did I feel in that moment, and you can bring, like you said, you're using, because you've stepped back, it's like watching somebody else's movie,
Right.
So it's, and if you get hooked by it again, then you kind of go, okay, that's enough. You go do something else. I got really mad one time when I was, I don't know, something stupid. I was working and something happened, obviously. I mean, it was all online. I was an editor for web pages. And I just was so mad. But I had met Buddhism. So, I'd go sit on the cushion, and think about it. And I was just still mad. It took something like 3 days for me to be able to sit and not just be enraged. It was, I'm sure, I mean, I can't even remember what it was. I mean, it's definitely in the category of no big deal, but it was all those things. I'm sure I thought I was absolutely right, I'm sure I felt like it had real consequences. Who knows? But the point is I didn't give up either. I didn't just say, okay, well, I guess I can't do it. It's more of just like, well, I didn't do it today. And okay. But I didn't like the way it felt every time I think about it. It'd rise, and so I kept working on it.
This gave me a tool, and that was just laugh at myself.
Oh, I mean, I am my favorite source of amusement, I mean, this is, my mind is the silliest thing that, so, but yeah.
The thing that's amazing about it, sometimes it actually is a big deal, that we can use the same tools.
Yes,
That will bring us through it.
that's right. It's because big deals do happen.
We do.
And the fact that we've developed tools for the little deals, that helps us be able to handle the big deals. And we may not believe that, but mostly because we haven't practiced handling little deals. That gives us a support basis for handling big deals. For one thing, you have a whole more list of accomplishments saying, I can handle this. Just because I don't like it doesn't mean I can't handle it. Just because it's not fair doesn't mean I can't handle it. Then, whatever, you can, whatever story you're making up, doesn't mean you can't handle it. And then you have to even look at, what if you can't handle it? What does that even mean? So if you have that thought, I can't handle this, you want to look at, what are you saying? What is the belief there? What are you really saying? Are you saying I can't handle it without help? Well, that's handling it. Getting help's handling it. So if we want to look at our thoughts, but that's another thought you want to have. Is it that I really can't handle it, or I don't want to handle it? Am I still resisting that it happened, or am I, whatever, and sometimes, like when that resistance is there, I don't want to handle it. I don't know, whatever it is. It's okay to just sit there going, I think I need to just be sad and compassionate for myself for a while. That's a tool to comfort ourselves. That this sucks. We're in samsara. There are all sorts of terrible things that happen. Samsara is the nature of suffering. So it's good to just be able to kind of pause and go, wow. And then when there's space, it's not right away. When there's space, you go, gosh, and all kinds of people feel this way. This is why the Buddha said, we want to work at ending our suffering, not just, little Band-Aids all the time. So it's a lot of inwardness and a lot of, it seems it can make you feel somewhat like you're so self-absorbed. Like, oh my God, I have to think about myself, but we're self-absorbed to begin with. If we're honest with ourselves, we're always thinking about that. So we just want to be effective at the way we're looking at things. Instead of from the point of view that we're the center of the universe, maybe from the point of view of interdependence and how can I respond to this without adding suffering to it, or without adding addiction to it, the craving, that I have to have it, kind of thing. That, like if you comfort yourself with buying things, and that might be a problem, so you have to look at that, yeah. Just, it's, you never get bored if you're trying to work with yourself. If you have compassion. So,
saying that you can't handle is a step in the right.
That you can handle it.
Even is a good step.
Absolutely. We need to know when we need more tools. Like, that's why I read the Dharma. Because I don't have the wisdom the Dharma has. So I need to read the Dharma to keep going, oh yeah, that's right. Maybe I want to look at it this way, because, my habits have just ended up with me still being in samsara, so I'm, I'd rather be in a Pure Land, but, so we need, we all need help. That's why teaching, the Buddha wouldn't have taught anything if there was no point. And for the first 45 days or something, he didn't think there was a point. And then someone said, please, I'm trainable. So. The good news is You don't have to become an expert to feel better. You know, you just have, it's just like, it's amazing how just a little attention to our inner world can help reduce our suffering. Yeah. Where we can use that humor that just kind of goes, oh, I'm just a billboard for, I didn't get what I want. And it gets a little easier to let go of that, So, and then it doesn't arise as often. Or it's so obvious what it is, you do just move on. I need new neck exercise. Excuse me while I do some neck exercises. Oh,
It's tough growing up,
it is tough growing
you
up.
know, acknowledging that is a tool.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It is. In fact, the whole leaky window thing has made me really hate being an adult. Can I just call my dad and have him fix it? It's pathetic. And what's really behind that attitude of, oh, can I just call my dad and have him fix it? Is this thinking that it's much bigger than it actually is.
Story.
Yeah, exactly. And you're thinking that what you do matters. As if you can make I have to find the right decision, Well, we've had 3 experts not figure it out. Why do I think I can just figure it out? It's just, but you got to explore a little to see, what am I holding on to? I'm holding on to the fact that there's a right answer and I haven't found it. And if I don't find the right answer, then I'm just going to screw it all up. I'll spend more money. I'll end up spending twice as much money. Yeah, I don't know, whatever story I've made up, whatever I'm afraid of. Yeah.
Recently, kind of related to what you're saying, I didn't do something perfectly or well enough. I felt like a fool and I was worried about what I was thinking. And then where there was growth was, and this was real, not initially, it's better that it wasn't perfect. If it was perfect, it would have moved your whole narrative that you're supposed to be that way. So it was a learning moment, not that I was, but it was interesting.
Yeah, really recognizing that every time we have a process like that, of a story that is actually reinforcing an unskillful habit, is important. Like thinking, going, oh, I did do that perfectly. I'm just, can become that expectation of, I always have to do it perfectly. So one of the things we can look at, even with just something as, like that, is just that, really, are you sure perfect is even in there? Oh, it's like, because there isn't a perfect. It all, because that means we can control external things. And we like that. And because we think happiness and suffering is there. We need to connect all these dots, to realize we've woven this whole belief system, and all of it's rooted in this idea that I need to take care of this in order to be happy and not suffer. And it actually includes all of this stuff. We want it to be we want a perfect answer, because if there's a perfect answer, that means we can control things, and I can find the perfect life, and I can find the perfect this, and ad nauseum, So it's not like that. That's, we don't want to grasp to that. So yeah, that's definitely a learning. And we want to see when we're reinforcing some unskillful habits of mind. And sometimes we do it by blaming others, well, I'm expecting them to be perfect. Oh, I'm expecting them, we want to really have chit chats with ourselves when we need them. So.
You're talking about wisdom, and when I think about seeking the wisdom of our elders, the wise elders. Like what we say, I take refuge in Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly, our community. The wisdom of the community. I think that we can be there for one another.
Absolutely.
I think for me, that's an important tool.
Talking to others and sometimes you have to ask for, I don't need comforting. I need some support with how I'm looking at this, that I don't need, oh, you did fine. I really need, I'm having trouble with this issue. I need more, some real back and forth type support, as opposed to just placating. Sometimes we need that pat on the back that just says, you did okay. Nothing wrong with that. But sometimes we really are returning to our friends as a way to get some more tools to work with situations with our minds. So, I had a group of friends that were from, I went to a adult children of alcoholics support group for 12 years. And we met every Thursday for 12 years. It was a miracle all by itself. It's the same group of people, same group of women. And so, so we were friends eventually, by default, because none of us would have been friends with each other. We're not that compatible, it was interesting. So, but we would have those kinds of conversations, of just, okay, I don't need, to be reminded I'm a worthy person. What I to, help with seeing the illogic of the way I'm thinking. So, and that was extremely helpful. I wouldn't have probably made it to Buddhism without it.
Step in the right direction.
It was just a step in the right direction. So we need validation for our experiences. It's helpful to not think, have any woman ever gone to the doctor and they kind of go, it's kind of all in your head. And, and then you need to turn to someone and say, I'm sorry. That's not helping. So, we need validation for our experience. That's not the same as not needing to change because of experience. Sometimes the things we learn from our experiences are faulty. So we need to develop new habits. So
we need each other.
We need each other, and that never ends. And the good news is we just keep moving from life to life to life to life, and so we never cease. Just this story ceases. So we must want to create the cause to have, an equally interesting, good story for the next time. And then eventually maybe we'll be in a Pure Land. So we don't want to carry our habits that cause us suffering, again and again and again. So finding our equilibrium and equanimity and contentment and recognizing when we're just dissatisfied and we're letting that fuel, we're giving it fuel. And we get, we're just making it worse, instead of getting over it. Anyway, let's dedicate. Thanks for showing up. Thanks for contributing. Thanks for participating. Thanks for being here. Thank you at home. It's always good to see you guys. Where is everybody? Cecilia's in North Carolina. I can't pronounce your name.
I'm in Nashville.
You're in
I'm-
Nashville. Who's in
I'm in
Nashville?
Nashville, North
Sherry's in
Carolina.
Nashville. Okay, so Sherry's also in North Carolina.
I'm in Puerto Rico.
Ron's in Puerto Rico.
Port St.
Tina's-
Lucie.
Port St. Lucie. Lane, where are you?
All the way in West Boca.
You're in West Boca. Vanessa, where are you?
Lakeland. It's in Polk
Like what?
County. Lakeland near Tampa in
Oh,
Orlando.
Lakeland, near Tampa. Okay. Tal, you're in Boca or someplace. Okay.
Hollywood.
Okay. Christina. Oh, you're in Hollywood.
Yeah, I live
Okay.
in Hollywood.
Okay. Christina, where are you?
Southern California.
Southern California. How cool is that?
Very cool.
You know, I mean, it's just really cool.
Yeah.
You know, so as much as I complain about technology, I'm really glad it's here. So anyway, so thanks for joining us. So we're going to say some prayers. And what we're, you know, so we're taking that intention we said at the beginning. Go away. Talking to my computer. That's not it. Oh, here it is. So we're taking our good intentions and then our efforts that to follow through on those intentions all creates merit, you know, and what that means is it's all creating positive imprints on our mind stream. And those positive imprints will ripen as a tendency to do positive things in the future, as well as positive results in the future, like meeting the teachings again, whatever. And we want to dedicate those positive results to benefit others. So that's the purpose of this part. All right. So pat yourself on the back, rejoice in your efforts. So it's on page 240 something, 46 of the prayer book. And for what this also does is make it last until all sentient beings are enlightened. Yay, team. May all beings everywhere, plagued by sufferings of body and mind, obtain an ocean of happiness and joy by virtue of our merits. May no living creature suffer, commit evil, or ever fall ill. May no one be afraid or belittled with a mind weighed down by depression. May the blind see forms and the deaf hear sounds. May those whose bodies are worn with toil be restored on finding repose. May the naked find clothing, the hungry find food. May the thirsty find water and delicious drinks. May the poor find wealth, those weak with sorrow find joy. May the forlorn find hope, constant happiness, and prosperity. May there be timely rains and bountiful harvests. May all medicines be effective and wholesome prayers bear fruit. May all who are sick and ill quickly be freed from their ailments. Whatever diseases there are in the world, may they never occur again. May the frightened cease to be afraid and those bound be freed. May the powerless find power and may people think of benefiting each other. For as long as space remains, for as long as sentient beings remain, until then, may I too remain to dispel the miseries of the world. And then we'll recite His Holiness's long life prayer on page 244. In the land encircled by snow mountains, you are the source of all happiness and good. All powerful Chenrezig, Tenzin Gyatso, please remain until samsara ends. And then the prayer for, yeah, that one, 234. Sorry about, don't get nauseous watching this scroll over the screen. Where is it? Oh, it's too far. 9, 10, 11, 12. I pasted it on a different page in my online book. You have it on 234?
I do.
Okay.
Thank you.
Peerless teacher and assembly of the children of the victorious ones, Sravakas and Pratyeka Buddhas, victorious Lozong father and sons, along with the lineage masters, all the objects of refuge of infinite lands, please bestow the virtue and goodness of accomplishing this prayer here and now, holding and spreading the Muni's precious and complete teachings through explanation and practice. You wore the armor of patience that is never discouraged. Incomparable venerable Guru, to you I make request. While striving single-pointedly for the sake of the victorious one's teachings, the sole gateway through which all benefit and happiness emerge, and from mother living beings, you suddenly departed to peace. What a great loss. Nevertheless, through the undeceiving truth of the blessings of the ocean of the three jewels and the great waves of bodhicitta of the children of the victorious ones, may the smile of a reincarnation swiftly beam in glory for fortunate disciples. Yay. Thank y'all. Have a good week.
Thank you so much, Venerable.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Venerable.
Bye,
Thank you.
everybody. Have a good week.
You too.
Medicine.
Medicine Buddha.